Nothing said on the Touchgrass podcast is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions only, not financial advice or necessarily the views of the Touchgrass podcast. Our hosts, guests, and the Touchgrass podcast team may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed. Enjoy the show. GM, welcome back to another Touchgrass podcast episode. Obviously, we had the Trump stuff yesterday, so we are recording a day after the big Trump, news showroom. We'd like to say we'd had Matt scheduled for about 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know how we keep doing this, but we luckily have the legendary Matt Hougan a day after the Trump stuff happened. Obviously, Hyperliquid's moving. Everything that Matt loves to talk about, and he's been going on so many shows in the past 2 months, with dormant markets. We have him where the market is ripping. We have him ripe. Matt, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's such good timing. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to be back in a fun crypto market.
Awesome. Let's start it off, Matt. What did you think of everything that happened yesterday? The Trump stuff obviously helped markets move a lot. Inflows have been the biggest they've been in the past 3 months. Do you think markets are picking up? What's happening right now?
Yeah, look, I think it was like a perfectly laid fire. There was perfect kindling, and all it was waiting for was the spark. I had been saying for a few months that we saw these indications that we were near the bottom of a bear market. Some of those indications, long-term holders stopped selling, started accumulating. The market stopped reacting to bad news, right? Sailor would sell Bitcoin, Bitcoin would rally. That doesn't make sense. Those are signs that the market sort of had exhausted itself of sellers. And then you just needed a catalyst. And we got this incredible 1, 2, 3 punch. We had the Treasury intervening in the long end of the bond market, effectively blinking at the fiscal situation, right? That was the condition almost that created Bitcoin, was the government bailing out and intervening in the markets. So that was a positive. And then we had the White House meeting where Trump talked about bringing Hyperliquid to the United States and potentially buying crypto. It'd be hard to pre-program a better series of words to clip and share on X than what we got. And we also had the SEC come out with pro-crypto regulation crypto asset, which provided a pathway for new crypto assets to launch that do interesting things. That was just enough to get people buying. They bought into a market where there was significant shorts. Those shorts got blown out. It built on itself. Then you saw Asia follow through. You can never say it's the exact bottom, and we're not going like vertical from here, but it was a real turning point. I think the bottom may be in, and I think we may go substantially higher.
Yeah. Do you think also like with equities slowing down, like all the memory stuff, the AI stuff has slowed down? Do you think that also has a contributing factor here? Is that a market
I
that you guys look at as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We follow that market carefully. And it's 100% true that the sort of attention investor has been swallowed by a series of investments, right? If you go back to Q4 of last year, we forget this, but it was gold, right? Everyone was piling into gold. That thing shot to $5,000 an ounce. It was the easiest trade. And then it became memory and lithography and robotics and space. And it was just like this black hole swallowing up capital. The fact that some of the air came out of that balloon with the sort of blow up of situational awareness, with the blowout of leverage in that space, also created a possibility for money to flow back into crypto. So we had no sellers, we had catalysts, we had money looking for the next big thing. You have the tokenization narrative. It was a lot of good things at once. Makes me think that the move probably isn't over. But I do think sort of the air coming out of the AI bubble a little bit definitely contributed.
100%. And I think you mentioned this on so many shows, and I don't know why people were like, we haven't bottomed or we have to go so much lower. Whereas there was so many good news, so many bad news, sorry, coming out, and Bitcoin does absolutely nothing. Nothing happens. The volatility on over the weekend, if you look at those sticks and you just laugh at the screen, and suddenly you kind of see that everyone coming into this week were like, yeah, we're going lower or we're going to do nothing. But the positioning was so offsides where, as you said, one thing led to another, and we had this massive squeeze happen. But you mentioned the bond news that came out. I think that was like the big macro shift. I know this as someone who joined in 2021 cycle. Quantitative easing was something. It was like a key word for all of us. Oh my God, QE, let's go! All the risk assets are going to pump. This is something similar to that, but it's not quite that, and at least that's not the wording they're using. So for our audience who's not maybe know more of the macro stuff, could you explain like what that announcement or that news means and how good it is it for risk assets like Bitcoin and others? And I've heard that they've doubled as well. And Weston today, I think a couple hours back said we'll do more than 4 billion. So it's just adding on to that. So could you kind of
Yeah.
break that down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened this time is the long end of the bond curve, right? The 10 and 30-year treasuries, which is what determines what mortgages cost, and therefore very important to affordability for many people in the US, ran away. It got almost to its highest level in since before the great financial crisis, right? It got right up to that zone. And you saw the Fed intervene not once, not twice, but now arguably three times, right? First, they bailed out the Japanese yen. They bailed out the yen because Japan holds a lot of US treasuries, and Japan was going to sell that treasuries to bail it out themselves. So instead, the US sold euros because it didn't want additional sale pressure on these long bonds. And the market sort of shrugged that off. But then Besant came out and said, we're doubling the buybacks of the long end of the bond. So what they're doing is they're issuing short-term debt, and then they're buying long-term debt. It's sort of called a twist, where you try to make interest rates do that. You're willing to pay a little bit more for the short-term debt to drive down the long-term debt. That's good for risk assets because risk assets are priced off of that long-term debt. It's also a signal that, and this is the more important fact, that the US government isn't going to let those long term interest rates go up over time. It will do whatever it takes. It will engage in quantitative easing if it has to. It will take whatever steps it needs to make sure those assets goes down. That's bad for the value of the dollar. That's high for inflation. It's good for Bitcoin. And that's why the market rallied. I said he did it a third time because, as you mentioned, he did it, rates came down, but then rates came back up. And then he came back in and said, oh, yeah, well, we'll do even more, right? And that just shows you that they're committed to doing this. And anytime the government is mucking with the money, that is good for Bitcoin. And that's what's going on. That's why we're rallying.
100%. I think we want to go into a lot of the fun stuff, but I want to ask you. I think you have a unique perspective on this. We are seeing so many unprecedented things in the market happening, whereas people just don't know how to react. Right? Like for someone seeing this for the first time, obviously we're not macro experts like everyone, as you've watched it for decades, but so many things that are even unprecedented over the last 5 6 years that we've been paying close attention to, people just can't grasp that fact, and they're like calling for either crashes like so many people are. They just can't believe that equities can keep rallying, and the earnings were awesome for every single company and they still went down. And the way that people are viewing this is very very different than it was a few years ago. So considering all this, right, we have debt at 40, I think it crossed 40 trillion today or yesterday. So that's crazy. And we have this new kind of asset class growing, and yields are still high, right? And we have all this happening. How do you view? And I think you guys are like very very far ahead than everyone else, who are always conservative and they don't believe in these things. Like I saw so many like gold is going back to 3,000 or something, or gold can't go back, but it's gold is in very new spot right now than it was few years ago. So how do you view this like changing market landscape in general, and how investors have to adapt to kind of to this new regime?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that even for someone who's been doing this for 25 plus years, it's a crazy, intimidating market, right? We've never seen something like AI. The capex buildup is bigger than it was for the railroads. It's the largest ever. You're seeing things like Google issuing debt and then issuing equity. Um, you have the largest IPOs of all time coming into the market. You have China emerging and challenging that. You have $40 trillion of debt. I mean, it is crazy. In these moments, what I like to do is acknowledge that there are some things that are just confusing and complex and beyond my capability to forecast, and to focus on the things that I do feel comfortable, do feel high confidence in. I feel very high confidence that that $40 trillion number is going up. The only thing Washington can agree on is spending more money. We're running $2.5 trillion deficits at a time of economic growth. If there was a recession, those would be $4 trillion, $5 trillion deficits. The interest on that is going up because rates are moving cyclically higher over time. So that number is going to go from 40 to 50 to 60 to 80 to $100 trillion. I feel very confident that that is true. The world is getting more digital, not less. That's been a trend that's been going on since the 70s. I see no reason for that changing. The people who grew up knowing crypto are getting older and richer. That seems like that is definitely going. If you put all those together, you can feel pretty confident that this asset class, Bitcoin specifically, but other assets, are going to go up over time. I try to keep those big picture things in mind. I have views on everything. I have a view on the AI cycle. I have views on robotics, but I try to focus on the things I have the most confidence in and the most knowledge about, and those are some of the things, and then sort of ignore the noise that circulates around them.
And that confidence must be even high when it's contrarian at this point.
As they say, in order to make money in the market, you have to be right and non-consensus. If you're wrong, obviously you lose money. If you're right and consensus, you get the market return, right? AI is consensus. Robotics is consensus. I'm bullish on both, but try to find someone who's not. The beautiful thing about crypto right now is I'm pretty sure it's right. Like, I'm pretty sure the world's assets are moving on chain. Tokenization is going to many trillion dollars. Stablecoins are going to trillions. Bitcoin is getting adopted, but it's strongly non-consensus. And again, in order to make money, you need to be non-consensus and right. Of all the things in the world, crypto fits that for me. So I agree, non-consensus, and hopefully right is a good place to be.
Awesome. And one of your biggest consensus bets besides Bitcoin for Bitwise as well. And I saw yesterday that you guys are, I don't know, did record volumes. I don't know if it's record volume, but did like a huge for Hyperliquid and in total around 400 or 500 million. But yesterday was massive for, it was like one of those, when at that Bitcoin conference when Trump announced, the first time when he announced it, strategic reserve for Bitcoin, he said Hyperliquid is going to compliantly enter the US, which is probably the biggest catalyst, bigger than Coinbase Circle partnership, bigger than some of the HIP 3, HIP 4 kind of upgrades and whatnot. How do you see that move? And first of all, what's your reaction to the market impact it had? Did you kind of see that coming? And second part is, how do you see that rollout even happen for Hyperliquid? Because everyone is speculating on how this will play out.
Yeah, I mean, first, the market move is just a down payment. If this actually happens, the upside on Hyperliquid is really significant, right? This is
Yep.
not a one-day trade. This is a multi-year trade if you think this is going to occur. Uh, I'll say this about Hyperliquid. The reason I don't think it's priced in, I think people underestimate the quality of the team at Hyperliquid, their ability to navigate this. You saw that by the fact that they got it into a White House announcement. Jake Chervinsky, who's the lawyer for the Hyperliquid Institute, is one of the best lawyers in crypto. He has been for the past decade. I have huge respect for him. And so if anyone can take us from this offshore entity that people love to something that can tackle the world's largest financial markets, I think it's the Hyperliquid team and Jake working together, and they're making huge progress. There are actually like 3 or 4 steps that you need in order for this to happen. Like, among the things you need the CFTC to decide perps are futures, which I know, like, that sounds like silly, but there's this debate: are they futures or are they swaps? They defined a certain number of them as futures, but not all of them. You need to take like 3 or 4 very hard steps. This is a process that will take years, but the prize at the end is really significant. Look, everyone who can access Hyperliquid loves it. because it's 24/7, 365 exposure across different asset classes and very financially efficient tools with a very good UX. That's why it's scaled so fast. And if you think it can penetrate the US market, yeah, I mean, you could see this thing become one of the largest financial firms. It's not a firm, largest financial entities in the world. I think I think it's a huge opportunity for investors. I still think it is.
Yeah, I see it the same way. So many are like $100 or something. I'm like, guys, you have to dream bigger. You have to dream bigger. And we've stopped dreaming. I tweeted this other day. We stopped dreaming for Bitcoin as well, which is kind of sad.
Hmm.
But adding
Matt, do
on
you
to
think?
that,
Wait,
yeah,
KG, before
go
that,
ahead.
Matt, I've only heard folklores of this. Like the first time Bitcoin was mentioned on like a big news, which was CNBC back in 2020, 2016, I think it was. Would you say this hyperliquid moment was as significant as that? Like, I know it's too early to tell, but like with volumes showing that, like, would you say the interest in hyperliquid from based on the inbound requests that your team gets about hyperliquid, have they gone up in a day?
Yeah, actually, a great question. The answer is absolutely yes. The amazing thing about Hyperliquid is in crypto, everyone knows it. Everybody. And you take one step outside of crypto, and it's like literally no one knows it. Not like a few people know it, it's literally no one knows it. If you go to a major financial advisor conference or a major family office conference, and you say Hyperliquid, people just think it's a word. They don't even know that it's an entity. They've never heard of it. So the fact that that does bring to mind the Bitcoin thing, right? Bitcoin had a few of those cultural moments. There was the Mark Andreessen op-ed in the New York Times, I think in 2013. There were a few other TV mentions, but when it got reliably onto CNBC, that was a really big moment. I think it is somewhat akin to that, and we have seen pickup in inbounds, and we did see, I think, the highest volume day in B Hype, our Hyperliquid ETF, and I suspect that will accelerate into the future. Look, I think a big general theme is going to be revenue-driven tokens in the second half of the year. Hyperliquid is number one, but the fact that you have the president saying it, it's a really big deal.
The way that I have started to think about hyperliquid is like coming back to our earlier conversation about, making non-consensus bets, and then, the monetary upside there is quite high. I feel like, at least for me and KG, the bubble we live in is CT, and everyone is like hyperliquid consensus as a bet. And then it takes like a worldview outside where you're like, hyperliquid might actually be a consensus, non-consensus bet, where it was like Bitcoin, where everyone who believed in it, who was part of the circle, knew about it, and then it sort of took time. Would you say hyperliquid's kind of positioned the same way right now?
Absolutely right. Yeah, extremely well said. Consensus, non-consensus bet, and yeah, the way to test that is find a friend who doesn't love crypto and ask them if they know what Hyperliquid is, and I would be shocked. I really, again, I'm at financial conferences. These are finance people, and it's like close to literally zero. So I think that is right. It's a consensus, non-consensus bet, and then the important thing is the people for whom it's non-consensus are the people who control most of the money, right? They have all the money, and so they have a 0% allocation. I don't think that will stay the same. So I think there's a lot of money to come into the market.
And then Matt, as this market evolves, I also want to ask you where, like, how we should think about this in terms of like prediction markets weren't a consensus bet like 2 years ago, and then CT found out about it, and then now everyone knows about it. At what stage do you call this like a consensus bet where you're like, okay, hyperliquid, like, is it when it reaches as big as poly market or Koshi in terms of relevance? Like, where does the line stop?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I will say that these things usually take longer than you think. So before crypto, I was in the ETF industry. I was CEO of ETF.com. Everyone knows what an ETF is now. But for the first like 10 years, I was in the industry, most people didn't know what an ETF was. Maybe at least the first five, like you would say ETF and they would say, you mean EFT? Maybe you're like, guys, there's trillions of dollars. Like everyone's launching them. What are you doing? So I think it could take a while. Prediction markets scaled really fast. There's something about them that people understood, visceral, good branding. Hyperliquid, I think, will take a little bit longer to stream into people's consciousness. Um, and I don't know what will be the moment when I think everyone knows about it. Maybe when BlackRock launches a Hyperliquid ETF, which they shouldn't do. They should leave the market to me.
Also, I don't think people should have that. It doesn't. It needs to have that viral movement for price appreciation to happen. Because if the big guys believe it, big guys use it, it should kind of find its way. Because prediction markets have that advantage of everything can be a market, and it is similar to a sports book model of marketing where you have the elections, you have the Super Bowl, you have the World Cup and whatnot. So the dispersion is much wider. Whereas right now we're seeing the financialization of everyone on Robinhood using zero DT options and stuff. That probably will happen with Hyperliquid as well with perps as it gets adopted. But it probably doesn't even need in the next 2 years for price to go up, I feel.
No, I think that's right. I think probably what you really want to see is, and they're already doing it, but you want to see the world's hedge funds and macro traders increasingly trading on Hyperliquid, right?
Yep.
That's ultimately what will make token go up, because that will generate the revenue that generates the buyback that drives the valuation increase.
It's
So
similar. It's similar to the AI builder, right? Like all the enterprises use it, and all the retail, like there are no power users who actually buy the paid plan in a way. And yeah,
totally right. Yeah. And look, I don't think Hyperliquid is done, right? Prediction markets haven't scaled there.
yep.
RWAs, everyone's excited. They're 46%. They should be 90%. Right? They're a much bigger share of the world's assets than crypto specifically. So it still has significant room to grow.
Do you have
And
a price target for Hype, Matt?
We don't yet. We're working on it. We actually have a research project to work on it in the second half of the year, but we don't have an official one. So I shouldn't give a Matt Hougan one until Bitwise has a firm one.
no worries.
But higher.
But man, one thing we've been watching, we've been covering Hyperliquid since TGE, and we have seen the competition in crypto with other dexes and whatnot. Obviously, it came out number one, but now the leagues have gotten bigger with CME, Nasdaq, and whatnot. And recently, I think just 2 weeks back, they've announced that from December or something, they'll make it 23-hour trading, and almost like 24 overnight sessions will be there. How do you think this plays out, right? Perps becoming more, and you have these traditional venues also offering overnight sessions. How, like, I feel like there'll be a big just market structure shift. And how do you think that plays out? Who do you think will be impacted the most? Uh, because right now the overnight sessions and all are very liquid, and I'm sure that will get a lot better with more TradFi getting involved. But just how do you see this overnight 24/7 evolve with the Hyperliquid entering bigger leagues?
Yeah. Look, I think what you. I'm trying to see how I want to attack this. Um, One mistake people make is I think they assume when large providers come into the market that they'll dominate the market. When Nasdaq comes or CME comes, they'll wipe the floor. No one owns Hyperliquid. But the history of crypto suggests that's not really true, right? Think about Circle or Tether, right? When PayPal came into the market, they're going to wipe the floor. They're going to own the stablecoin market. Uh, PayPal is like what, 1% of the market right now. Circle's the largest share ever. Tether is giant. Um, there are a few more examples. Think about Coinbase. When ETFs launched, no one was going to trade on Coinbase. Or when Fidelity turned on direct crypto trading, who would be trading on Coinbase? And yet today, Coinbase is the largest crypto brokerage in the world. I do think people overestimate the ability of TradFi to compete on crypto's turf. Now, when it's in TradFi's turf, like when there's an ETF, we saw BlackRock, largest market share of Bitcoin ETFs. But when it's a crypto native thing, and I think perps are a crypto native thing, I think there's a real advantage to crypto. So I would expect Hyperliquid to do well in that competitive environment. I think the regulated entities are going to try to box it out from a regulatory perspective. That's why the announcement from the president was so important, because if it can get to compete, I think it has a very high probability of winning. The real person who's going to lose is calendar dated futures. So the real innovation here is perps versus calendar dated futures. Perps are easier to use. Calendar dated futures are sort of a vestige of the agricultural origin of futures. They're not what investors would want. And so I actually think that's where the market share is going to shift. And TradFi firms will win a share of it. But I think crypto native firms will win more than their fair share of it. That's my
Do you think
expectation.
so? The impact is going to be on the broking business. Is that correct?
Oh, well, it depends on which piece you're talking about. I think there's going to be some market share shifts between the derivatives exchanges. I think there's going to be market share shifts between away from traditional stock trading venues onto tokenized venues, even though those traditional venues will compete. And then I think there's going to be significant disintermediation of sort of the middle market of the traditional brokerage services, of some of the custodial services, of some of the record keeping services. I think a lot of that will be um, uh, erased, ideally. But at the top, there's going to be this market share shift onto more crypto native venues.
That makes sense. And then Matt, we're also seeing this very interesting trend on chain where we now have stocks and equities. On chain, we always talk about TradFi and crypto sort of competing, the examples you gave. Do you have opinions on like stocks on chain, with like Solana and Robinhood? Do you think that's going to be a big trend? And is that part of the tokenization trend that you've been observing?
Totally. Yeah. I love stocks on chain. I love what Robinhood is doing. I love what Ondo is doing. I love what Xstocks is doing. You're seeing Binance move into the space. You're seeing others move into the space. We're very early, right? There are only a handful of billions of dollars of stocks on chain now, but they clearly have product market fit, right? People outside the US want to access US securities. People want to use tokenized stocks in DeFi settings. People want to trade 24/7, 365. I think that's going to be measured in trillions and then tens of trillions of dollars in relatively short order. So we're enormously bullish on that. There are, of course, now a bunch of different varieties of how you do it. Everyone has their different version, whether you're at Backpack or you're at Ondo or you're at B Stocks or whatever. They're all slightly different. I think that's normal in this stage of growth. Eventually, there'll be regulation that sort of streamlines those into one standardized format. But I think right now we're at that Cambrian experimentation phase, and I think that will exist for another year or two. But I think this is a huge growth area for the next year plus, and I think almost all the firms operating in it will do well because there's so much growth ahead.
Is there a way that Bitwise would want to position themselves in this ongoing trend? Like, is that something you guys have thought about?
Yeah, absolutely. We have some product announcements coming out in the next couple of weeks focused specifically on this. So this has been a big area of focus for us. It's one of the places we've been building over the winter. You've seen us do more on chain with vaults, with staking, and I think on chain asset management with tokenized securities is something that we're very interested in.
Yeah, I think the confidence shake that happened over the last couple of weeks in terms of self custody and whatnot, I think would attract more and more people to more institutionalized versions of these products, and I definitely see a trend there. Uh, but I've been following the Robinhood kind of story over the last, I don't know, not just the chain but the product over the last 5 6 years, and I know you love Robinhood. You've mentioned it a lot of times. A generational company that's just getting started, uh, and they've had a unique approach the way they launch their chain. They embrace more things. They're more crypto native, and definitely makes sense, right? How they've kind of grown. What are your thoughts? We have more of these chains coming, right? Circle is going to launch, and we have more some of these institutional corporate kind of chains coming on online soon. How do you think they'll play out? Like, for example, Circle's Arc is going to come out soon. What do you think something like that, a stable coin focused chain strategy should be, and any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I think it first pays to think about why Robinhood was so successful because it was successful. I think it's three things. You hinted at them, KG. One, it has a well established brand, right? People know Robinhood. It comes with trust in this market. Two, it has a lot of users, right? It is bringing your own users is the best thing you can do to any launch, and it brought a lot of users. And the third is it directly integrated with and didn't try to compete with DeFi, right? Uniswap was there, Morpho was there, etc. And that made it instantly useful. The question is, will these other chains bring the same things to the market? Like, does Circle bring users? Arguably, yes. Does it have the same level brand as Robinhood? I'm not sure. And then will it be easily integratable with other DeFi protocols? I don't know. And I do wonder if you start to break any of those things, if you're going to succeed. I would actually expect the last one to be the hardest. That was the most unique thing about what Robinhood did. The sort of classic response would be to wall that off and seek to take all that profit for yourself, right? From all those activities, provide those services, those financial primitives yourself. But in doing so, you're robbing yourself of the benefit of being integrated into the DeFi ecosystem. So I think the chains that will succeed are ones that bring users and bring brand and integrate fully with DeFi in the way Robinhood did. I think it was very smart from their perspective. And we'll see. We'll see on Circle. I think it'll be interesting to see.
On the topic of Matt, do you have any opinions on Circle's acquisition of USDH on Hyperliquid and how that changed market dynamics?
Look, I think more broadly, Circle is doing a good job adjusting to the markets. I think that's the way to think about that acquisition. I don't have a specific view on like how it impacts earnings from a short-term perspective. Um, but I do have a specific, like my view is more general on Circle because I don't spend all that much time analyzing it. It's actually an analyst on our team, um, which is it's shown itself to be very responsive to the market. And this is an example of it, right? Like uh, everyone always comes up with new circle killers. Would they be fast enough to make this deal with Hyperliquid and understand the importance of it? I think from that's the alpha from my perspective. I don't have a specific revenue outlook associated with it.
Yeah, I think the network effects are good enough, and maybe that the announcement we saw earlier, like that consortium of 30 logos or something, that was BS. I felt, but I agree with you. Uh, but Matt,
Yeah.
we've been talking. Crypto is awesome. We spend all our time here itself, uh, but there's so many other things happening in the world. As you said, this is. I think you said. I think everyone. I saw. What a time to be alive, right? Uh, there's so many other trends happening besides crypto that are complementary, adjacent. Anything that you're kind of personally paying attention to, not just as an investor and asset manager, like biotech or space or anything that's kind of taking your attention right now.
Well, everything. I mean, I meant it. What an incredible time to be alive, right? You think about the last 20 years of technology. It gave us like the iPhone, which is amazing, gave us social media and streaming, which is fun. Um, but the next 20 years are giving us, robots and intelligence and cancer cures and space. That's like way cooler. I spend a fair amount of time thinking and reading about biotech. My first job in finance was as a biotech analyst at an active mutual fund, and I worked in the biotech industry for a while. So that's a special area. It was amazing to see the news from Moderna with their cancer vaccine related to melanoma. I think that's a huge area. Again, I think that's a story that probably expands from there. So there's a lot going on in the biotech space. I also think robotics is the most obvious trade that I've ever seen, and I think people are dramatically underestimating the scale of that over the next handful of years. So I spend a reasonable amount of time reading about robotics and am fascinated by some of the projects in that space. But I love it all. I mean it. It's an incredible time to be alive. I do think like technology is finally paying the dividends that we hoped it would pay, and the combination of crypto and AI and robotics and biotech and maybe space. I don't know what acronym that spells, but there's probably an acronym there of really cool industries that will do well in the future.
But I think the first 20 years, like the last 20 years, maybe were not, you have all these awesome innovations, but like it kind of was not additive to your overall human life in general. But what's coming next 20 years with health improvements and better tech, we don't have to sit near the keyboard anymore. We can just, the interactions is going to be so cool. That's what's kind of interesting. And crypto I think is going to play a big role in that, as you mentioned. uh, but yeah, again, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I do think you can think of it as a continuum for what it's worth. People think of it as like, oh, we've changed. It's sort of computers have gotten better, and now we're able to do much more interesting, exciting things. But yeah, I'm way more excited about curing cancer than I am about Instagram. That's not a fair comparison for the tech industry for sure. There were some great things that came out of the last handful of years, but I do think the next 20 is just going to be phenomenally exciting. And I think for what it's worth, I know this is controversial on crypto Twitter, but I think it's okay to be excited about crypto and excited about AI and excited about robotics and biotech. I'm excited about it all. I think that's allowed.
Yeah, and the way that I think about it, Matt, is now that we have all these, pre-IPO stuff on chain, we have all these stocks, like crypto people's horizon to just trade crypto has grown so much more. Like we will see the rotation won't be majors, alts, memes, off ramp. It will actually be all of this, and then they'll rotate into stocks. Maybe they'll maybe go into bonds. They go into whatever is available on chain, and we'll see the on chain economy grow. Matt, you paint a great picture for the next 20 years, and I think it is a great time to be alive. This pod has been amazing. I think the last question to sort of summarize this whole pod is, how are you guys positioned for the rest of the year? And then we can also talk about the next bull market when you think it's coming, how you guys are positioned for it. But rest of the year probably more appropriate, and then we can talk about Utopia.
Yeah, look, we're very excited for the rest of the year. I think you're going to see from Bitwise, particularly more things on the on chain side of the equation. We were a crypto asset manager who started on TradFi products, but we love crypto. We started on ETFs. It would be a real shame if we didn't meet the market as it moved to on-chain finance. So we plan to do that. We've done that, as I said, with vaults. We've done it with staking. We're one of the largest staking providers now, and we're going to do it on on-chain asset management. So watch for a few announcements there. But more broadly, our real job is to keep people excited about crypto during these bear markets. That's why we have a sales team of like 25 people that go out. They do 15,000 meetings a year, because the worst thing that can happen in crypto is you can sort of lose your excitement in these bear market moments and then only get excited when the prices are up. These are actually the best times to be a crypto investor, when the fundamentals are racing ahead and the price is sort of lagging along. That's what you want. That's where we are. So we're going to keep having those conversations and then launch more into the world of on-chain finance.
Yeah. Fun story actually. Like you were on the show with Scott Melker the other day, and markets were slower than usual. And my dad watches Scott's shows like pretty frequently. I was telling him that I'm interviewing Matt Hougan today. So his main comment was, you're probably gonna have a more fun time because markets are hot right now. So I will tell my dad that we did have fun on this one. Matt, thank you so much for the time. This has been awesome. Catch you soon. See you on chain,
Yeah,
I
thanks
guess.
for having me, guys. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.